Hello, everybody, and welcome to another tabletop review with your host, me, Tabletop Junkie. I hope everyone is having a great, wonderful day today. Is that we are about to go over a game that I've been kind of delving into the last few months called Castles and Crusades. And when I first delved into it, I had the seventh printing book, of which you can get the digital copy only, strictly digital copy only for free on Troll Lord Games, of which I will have the link to that particular source in my description of my video at the end of the video. So today we're going to talk about the seventh printing of Castles and Crusades, the Player's Handbook. The biggest thing I like about Castles and Crusades is I would say the uniqueness and the ability to emulate old style D&D, or old style Dungeons and Dragons, as I should say, such as the first and second editions. It is a game that I grew to very much like, and hopefully you guys do like my review. I do recommend this book as well as the eighth printing, which we will cover in another video. So today we are just going to cover the Player's Handbook. I will also show off some great and wonderful art, just to show you guys the quality of art that you're getting for these books as well. Real quick, just because I do want to show off the main cover, it won't be in full screen, unfortunately, due to the fact that I already had the shared screen feature already sized, and it's permanently like that for the time being. I will probably get another shared screen feature where I will basically be sharing a bigger screen. So here we go. So one of the things I do want to show off is the main cover. This is the seventh printing book alternate cover, not the main cover that came with the seventh printing book. So here's the main cover. I I just have to continue liking the quality of art that actually went into Castles and Crusades at Troll Lord Games. Troll Lord Games has definitely outdid themselves with the artwork here. I'm scrolling up and down so you can see the logo as well as the font and the art of the dragon, and of course of the players taking on the dragon. You got looks like three players, two statues, and one's casting spells on the dragon, one is attacking the dragon, and one is looting, all in battle with the dragon. That's funny. So, all right. So just make sure we don't get too struck too bad. We're just gonna close that down as we're just gonna, there's really gonna be no art to show off here, just information, of which information you can get from TrollLordGames.com from the store, of which I will once again have that link shared here. The seventh printing was edited by Stephen J. Hedge, and also cover art was done by with Steve Chenault, Mark Sanby, Todd Gray, and James M. Ward. I have to give all these gentlemen props as that they have done a very good job on the. Okay, I do apologize for the pause. I don't know if I disconnected. I just got a warning that I was disconnected from YouTube, so that I shouldn't have been streaming. This guide and rule system for fantasy role playing is by Davis Chenault as well as A. Mac Golden. So I just gotta give these authors and editors and everyone props. There was other contributions of which there's a huge list, so I just have to name off who did the seventh printing. I don't know if they also did the original first printings. And as I stated in the previous video, we talk in printings as that this is Castles and Crusades, still first edition. They just did minor changes, and the changes are very minor. I can't express how minor they really are. They are very minor. Um, Information has not really been taken out. It has just been streamlined, moved, or added. Those three things. Nothing was taken out, disposed of, and new information was placed in its wake. Nothing like that. It's just been either moved, streamlined, which just cut down maybe some things about. It's still the same information, just maybe instead of doing one step, they took out another step or something like that. We will definitely, as we're doing these reviews of Castles and Crusades, we will be looking at the different printings and how they differ from each other, because I have actually been privileged to experience the seventh printing Player's Handbook, the second printing Castle Keeper's Guide, and the third printing Monsters and Treasures book as well. And then I did just get copies of the 8th printing Player's Handbook, the 3rd printing Castle Keeper's Guide, and the 5th printing Monsters and Treasures Guide. I actually like the fact that I skipped the 4th printing of the Monsters and Treasures Guide, that I didn't have to, that I didn't actually end up acquiring that one. Just for the simple fact of, or even experiencing, just for the simple fact of the difference between the 3rd printing and the 5th printing of the Monsters and Treasures Guide is actually seriously minor. We will actually go through the differences once we get down to those reviews, but right now, let's just do the review on the 7th printing. The book has all your basic information, your acknowledgement, where role-playing and role-playing meet, such as rolling the dice and actually acting out, as well as the introduction and basic stuff that you will need. It does actually have how to create a character. It is the one thing I will have to say about it while going through that chapter here. Let me actually mention, because there is a couple things while reading this book that I actually came across that I do not particularly like, because it's not exactly spelled out for new gamers. It's something that you have to be experienced in. It does not tell you in the book to roll 3d6 to gather your ability scores. It just says each attribute has a numeric score ranging from 3 to 18. So, being a veteran, because I've been a role player of tabletop games for over 16 years, being as veteran as I am, I would know that equivalently that would be 3d6s that you roll, or 4d6s and you take out the smallest one, but take out the lowest one. However, that does not say that plain as day in this book. It says it's supposed to say it on chapter 14, but it doesn't. It just tells you what you're rolling the dice for, but it doesn't tell you which dice to roll or anything like that. And for new players, I think that's kind of a big thing. So that is one of the things I think they might have changed in the 8th printing, but I'm not sure. And like I said, we're not doing the 8th printing. So that is one thing I did want to touch base on while doing this review, is that they do not spell that out plain as day. However, what they do actually make up for while generating the attribute scores and all of that stuff, and I'm even still looking through it just to be sure. Oh, it does say it, but it says it on 15 and in a small print. I don't know. Maybe it's just the organization of the book. Like I said, I actually had a new player, person who is a noob at Castles and Crusades, but they're also new at role-playing, kind of go through the book of the 7th printing, because they acquired it too from Trollord Games, and that was one of the complaints that was actually mentioned to me about it, and we talked about it, is that they couldn't find it. Now I finally found it after going through it. For some reason, I don't know why I missed that, but I told them it was on page 14, 15, that we argued. Well, there it is. It's on page 14, 15. Here, I'll even show it in my shared screen to prove that to that person that I was right. So, yeah, right there. So it says right there, generating attribute scores, rolling 3d6, player adds results, dice together. Yeah, so it is on page 15. So now I can just resort to this video for when they want to tell me I'm wrong. And I will admit I was wrong. I misspoke. So that is something I will even correct myself on in my video. So moving on down, the other thing that I do love about when it comes to the ability scores is this right here, the actual default ability scores, where 1 is a -4, and then 2 and 3 is a -3, and then 9 through 12 is a 0. Is the difference how this differs from the actual standard D20 system, where 9 and 10 is a 0, and 11 and 12 is like a 1, or 12 and 13 is like a 1. I like the ranges of how they do the ability scores in this one. It definitely makes it much more of a challenge, especially if you're getting like average roll. Your average roll usually ends up between 9 and 12, so you end up with a lot of zeros. You do end up with, it's been my knowledge that 50% of the time you will end up with a 0 modifier, while 25% of the time you'll end up with a negative modifier, and the other 25% of the time you will end up with a positive modifier. I do like that because it does promote a bitter end of a challenge and forces my players to be a bit more creative. That's what I feel. It doesn't give you the superhero feel. It gives you the feel of, hey, we made it, huzzah. This, I've actually had whole players actually do a celebration for themselves just for beating a challenge, because they actually came, like they came out with maybe a few bumps and bruises in D&D 5e or even 3.5 a little bit. But here in this game, they've come out with completely missing limbs, bleeding out, where in the end, success and beating a challenge is more of, yeah, we're gonna party because we survived, and oh my god, I can't believe we survived that. The odds were against us and everything. So yeah, Denza, and you know what? And let's take a minute and marvel at this artwork. This is good artwork by Troll Lord Games. So, and we're moving down to the classes, which I do like to discuss a little bit about the classes. We're going to go back up to the main page here, because like I said, I'm not going to try and thumb through all of this book. But I do want to discuss some key factors, which classes. Classes is always a biggest thing with any type of role-playing game, or roles, or even classless systems, depending on the system that it is. Here they do have a couple additions, like normally in other role-playing games of fantasy type, you have your barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, and wizard. This game, as a core rule, does not have a sorcerer, however. But they do have what they do have in place of guess not having a sorcerer is having an assassin, having an illusionist, a knight, and that is the other three classes that I don't see that comes usually standard to every D20 game. So, yeah, this is I think this is actually fairly awesome. And they do have now you do get primary and secondary attributes. You generally get one primary and one secondary. Your primary comes from your class, and your secondary actually you get to pick. Unless you're playing a human, then you get 3 primaries. You get 1 from your class, and 2 you get to pick. And that's probably because the humans don't really get much of any special abilities. We're humans are kind of generic. Whereas dwarves and elves get twilight vision, half-elves get twilight vision, and then some things from, depending if they're raised by the elves or raised by their human lineage. There is that. I do want to talk about the races. The different core races you get to select from, such as dwarf, elf, gnome, half-elf, halfling, half-orc, and human. Now, I do want to go through some things about that, because these are a little bit different. Like every other game, like every other RPG game and fantasy, humans are pretty generic and don't really get any special abilities. So, instead of, getting special abilities, they get to pick one additional primary attribute, which actually does affect your rolls very, very much. I'm going to take a drink here. I do apologize. For instance, dwarves are from inside mountains. They have something called deep vision that allows them to see 120 feet in complete darkness and dead of night. Elves get stuff like, enhanced senses, twilight vision. They get to move silently, which actually, you play an elf rogue, rogues get to move silently as well as assassins do too. So they get those kinds of things. And I'm only touching base on a few examples. They also get special modifiers for playing ranger, rogue, and assassin. Dwarves, I don't know if they get special modifiers. They do for rogue and assassins only. And each and every other race is the same thing. You get animal empathy and combat expertise and dark vision and enhanced hearing and spells for gnomes. Half-elves, they actually get... half-elves all get one of the same thing. For instance, all half-elves get empathy, move silently, and spot hidden doors. However, so if they're raised by humans, they also get, in addition to that, an attribute check modification as well as spell resistance. But if they're raised by the elven lineage, they get attribute modification +1 to dexterity and a -1 to constitution, as well as enhanced senses and spell resistance. So they do get some difference depending on which lineage you are raised from. Halflings, pretty much the same thing. They do get stuff like Fearless, Hide, Move Silently because they're small creatures, Dusk Vision. Half-orcs get stuff like Environment, just a lot of things to check in. And humans are just, like I said, generic. So they do get the extra ability score. And then the book goes on explaining your persona, alignment of law and chaos, good and evil, moving on down forward, which I think it comes standard for any and all veteran role players and tabletop RPG gamers. Then you have an equipment section that is full of equipment, and instead of masterwork equipment, they call it expert weapons and armor. And they do very well go into detail on explaining the cost of these expert weapons and armor and how it's modified based from your other, based from regular weapons and armor. The other thing I do like we cover is we get to choose between encumbrance and weight. Each one has a weight value, each one has an encumbrance value, and if you want to make up your own weapons and their own sizes and their own style, they actually have a section of how do you adhere to the rules based on the size of the weapon, the width of the weapon, the weight the weapon is supposed to be, and all together, and that will also grant you an EV, which is called encumbrance value. I use encumbrance value with my players, and encumbrance value, it will come in three forms. You can carry, if you carry the weight equal to your encumbrance value, you will suffer no penalties. If you carry the weight of your encumbrance value and above to a certain degree, you do suffer some dexterity penalties and penalty checks and stuff. And then if you go over your encumbrance value by 5 times, I think it's 3 times as much, if not more, unfortunately you are looking at, failing on every dexterity roll and stuff like that. And they do have a wide range of magic for wizards and illusionists, clerics and druids. They've kind of grouped those together, and there's a huge section on it too. Actually, I can tell you for a fact that magic starts on page 68 and extends all the way to 152. Now, here is my most favorite part about doing this review. There is a section called the Castle Keeper and the Game, which is a small section for castle keepers and how to plan out their games and stuff of how to do combat, scale the game, create the terrain, and all that stuff. So there is basic castle keeper, which in this case, game master or dungeon master information. So you don't necessarily need a castle keeper's guide to play. You can start by just having the player's handbook, which is actually very, very good. And some tips and tricks of how to do things. They have quite a bit of that. And actually that extends for quite a bit of the book. For instance, this book is about roughly 200 pages, and this starts on page 156 and goes all the way to the very end of the book. Now, a couple things that I did miss that I will actually go back and discuss is very simple. We do not have your typical fortitude, reflex, and will saves. The saves are the attributes themselves, such as your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And each one does cover a wide range of things. For instance, constriction and being held down is your strength check. Going through toxins and poisons would be a constitution check. Resisting death spells would be a charisma check. A few examples. But one of the things I do want to talk about is the leveling system. This is going to be the last thing that we touch base on in this video, so please listen very carefully. So each and every class not only has their own unique abilities, but they have their unique hit dice, their unique called BTH. I forgot what that means. I think it's base to hit is what it's called. I'm going to definitely look that up real quick. They have their own base to hit value, bonus to hit, not base to hit, bonus to hit value. And they each have their own experience point progression. Each one has different progression based on the abilities that they each grant the character. So for instance, to get to a level 2 assassin to level up, would have to receive 1,751 points, versus a barbarian that has more aggressive abilities and maybe a little bit more powerful does not progress to level 2 until reaching 2,101, versus the cleric, which is more spell-like and gives less abilities, but yet maybe a little bit more powerful because they do have one great ability called Turn the Undead. That would be 2,251, versus the druid, which I believe is also the same. Nope, druid is not the same. I believe that is a little bit different, but also grants 2,001 to level 2. Each and every one is different. And like I said, it's all based on the abilities, the strength of the class, and how the class functions. I think there's a lot more to it than that, but there's really nothing concrete coming from Troll Games regarding how that works, as far as I know, unless there is a book out there. Now, there is a book of character classes that I have not acquired yet from Troll Games, but will be at some time into the future. So yes, each one has their own unique bonus to hit value as well as their own unique experience point progression value, which actually does be pretty good, because if a party only receives roughly 1,800 points, that means classes that only need 1,751 is at level 2, while classes that need more than that are still at level 1. But it does not throw off the average party level, as everything is not based on party level. I mean, it kind of is, but it's more or less hit dice, which we will cover that at a later time, because monsters don't progress by level, but by hit dice. That is their level, and that is how things are done, which that is covered in the Monster and Treasures Guide, which that will be at a later video. Alright, well, we've been going pretty much on for a little over 20 minutes based on this value, or this review. And I'm going to show off a bit more of the art real quick, just to get you guys a little bit more enticed. Like I said, here is, this is progression of, what is this, a barbarian? Yes, I think this is a barbarian. Yep, barbarian. And their primary is Constitution. And they even have a quick reference guide right here for everything. And then if you want to, and they only go up to 12th level. In the 7th printing. However, in 8th printing, I can assure you there will be a great surprise. And if you want to go beyond 12th level, they have 13 plus. 13 plus is 200,000 per level. I will say this, that there is a level beyond 13 in the Castle Keeper's Guide 2nd printing, but we won't pretty much be covering that because I only witnessed that from a friend. I have not actually acquired that myself. I did acquire the 3rd printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide, which does not have that information in there no longer, as that did get moved from the 3rd printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide to the 8th printing of the Player's Handbook. So, with that said, yes, it is in the 2nd printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide to go 13 and beyond, because before they made the 3rd printing and the 8th printing, that was the information that they did move. As I stated, that is one of the minor changes that they made in the 8th printing, is they gave the level progression added there, but which originally existed in the earlier printings of the Castle Keeper's Guide is now in the later printings of the Player's Handbook. Well, and here's some more art from Troll Games. Bravo. I love their art of their characters. This is magnificent art, and it's actually, I'm not sure how I feel about the druid, but druids are meant to be mysterious. There's a fighter. Let me see if I can, and that is an illusionist. I gotta say, I do like that one. Oh, okay. So it looks, I mean, you can see all the great art. So, I mean, they've done pretty well. I'm just trying to see what else I can show. Let's see, anything for magic? They got some good art here. I know I'm zipping through it kind of fast. I do apologize. I'm just trying to, And here's a spell list and stuff. They even have page numbers. It's great referencing. I'm just trying to show off some really inspiring art. I think the best I actually had so far, unfortunately, is the alternate cover page. So they have other great art throughout the book. I just don't know how to find it at the moment. I mean, it's not a book I thumb through anymore, as in I now have the 8th printing. And I said there has been only information has been so far. I did just share an example of information being moved because showing level progression beyond level 12 was in printing, I believe it was in printing 2 of the Castle Keeper's Guide, and it was probably in the first printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide as well. The Player's Handbook did not house that before the 8th printing, but now it is in the 8th printing, so now you can go up to like level 24, because the Castle Keeper's Guide first and second printing. I can't speak on the first. I'm gonna stop that. I can speak on the second because I did see the second myself. I did see it with my own eyes. So the second printing usually housed levels 13 to 24. But now with the new books, which is the 8th printing Player's Guide, the 3rd printing Castle Keeper's Guide, and 5th printing Monsters and Treasures Guide, the difference is they took the information out of the Castle Keeper's Guide that was in the previous printings, put it in the 8th printing of the Player's Handbook, and now you have levels 1 to 24 in the 8th printing of the Player's Handbook, and they took that information out of the Castle Keeper's Guide, so it never reached the 3rd printing of the Castle Keeper's Guide. I sure hope that is not too confusing. Like I said, it's information that has just been moved. It's previously existed. It's been part of Castles and Crusades, as far as I'm concerned, since possibly it was written or is written in later printings. But regardless of which, it's not something. If it was something that was added, it wasn't added that long ago, and now it's not been removed. It's just been changed, or it's not been removed. It's just been moved. So that is kind of like my biggest thing about what makes Castles and Crusades, like why I remain fond of Castles and Crusades. So, alright, well that is everything that I've had today. We are going to look a bit more deeper into Castles and Crusades. The next video I will be doing on Castles and Crusades, which I don't have time for it yet, will be on the 8th printing of Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook. So just stay tuned. Watch. I got more videos coming out. Just keep a watch of my Twitter page as well as my YouTube channel, and you will see what I have coming to everybody. Well, that was my review today. Once again, I do recommend Castles and Crusades. I do recommend that book. I will have even the 7th printing if you don't want to get the 8th printing right away. If you want to just get your feet wet, I do recommend Troll Lord Games. Check out their store. I will have the link to the 7th printing book to their store in my description, as well as my co-hosts links and my link to my Twitter page as well. So that is everything for today, folks. I want to wish you guys all a great and wonderful day. Game hard, work hard, play hard. Game on, everybody. This is Tabletop Junkie giving his famous tabletop salute and signing off. Have a great and wonderful day.